Doctors don't use metaphors. The word was printed there, firm, clinical, unblinking, incurable. I read it so many times the letters lost their edges and turned into a dark blur. Sometimes I folded the paper into quarters, as if a crease could weaken what was written. Other times I left it open on the table like a dare to heaven. Look, God, I can't move this. I didn't sleep that night, neither out of anger nor panic. It was a kind of exhaustion that doesn't blink. The house seemed to hold its breath. At 3 a.m., when silence gets the loudest, I stood up. I didn't have a plan or pretty words. I set both palms on the kitchen counter and said the name of Jesus, softly like you call someone who is closer than you think. No thunder, no audible chorus. Just a steady nearness, like a chair placed beside mine and a voice you feel before you hear. I'm here. My prayer stumbled out, messy but honest. If you will, change what the paper says, and if you don't, change whatever is dying in me. I stayed there between breaths, repeating what I still believed. You can, you see, you know my name. When morning finally touched the window, it wasn't that I had changed. My hope had learned to stand up before I did. Days later, another test. Same cold room, same white coat, same serious eyes. Only now a doctor was squinting at a screen, looking for something that wasn't there. He cleared his throat, called in a colleague, scrolled the file. This doesn't match the previous findings. I didn't make a speech. I smiled small and thought, I know. Someone rewrote what the night tried to finalize. I used to think printed words had more power than whispered ones. Maybe that's why the report felt so heavy in my hands. It wasn't ink and numbers alone. It carried dates, waiting rooms, fluorescent lights, careful eyes that refused to promise. It carried every night I tried to keep my heart from disintegrating while my body did its quiet math. At first, it was suggestive language. We'll repeat the test. There are signs we need to monitor. I clung to each, maybe like a handrail on a staircase that felt too long. But corridors have a way of narrowing. Maybe became probable. Probable hardened into a diagnosis. And diagnosis arrived wearing a word that sounds like a locked door. Incurable. I learned to be practical. Spreadsheets of medications, alarms for doses, a calendar dotted with check-ins. I put beauty where I could, one flower in a glass, soft worship playing in the next room, small messages to keep me stitched to people I loved. And there was faith, quiet, ordinary faith that doesn't always shout, sometimes it simply keeps breathing. I read Isaiah 43 as if it had been mailed to my address. I have called you by name, you are mine. Each time it felt like God was returning my identity that fear kept trying to steal. But there were silent days, and silence when it leans against a word like incurable echoes. I rehearsed answers to questions no one had asked me yet. What if nothing changes? What if I've been naive? I carried those questions to God, not like demands, but like confessions. I don't know how to do this without you. Heaven didn't explode with fireworks. It answered with peace that didn't solve every equation, but held me steady inside them. The night of my turning didn't start with a soundtrack. It started with the sound of my own fatigue. Kitchens become altars when you stop pretending. The counter became my pew, the tile my ground, the dark a kind of sanctuary. I whispered Jesus' name like a lifeline, then let my words be small enough to fit in my chest. You can, you see, you know my name. I meant each sentence, and also needed them to mean me. Some miracles raw, mine moved like a tide, quiet, insistent, undoing what had dried my heart into a brittle shape. I didn't glow, and nothing levitated. But hope put its chair next to mine and refused to leave. And I sensed the faintest sentence press into my sternum like a hand. I am here. I am not leaving. I wish I could tell you I woke up healed and humming. I woke up blinking slowly at a ceiling that had watched me do this before. But something in the room had changed temperature. My dread, which usually arrived first, waited in the doorway as if unsure of its invitation. I did normal things because normal is an act of resistance. I boiled water. I rinsed a cup. I taped a verse to the bathroom mirror where my sleepy eyes would crash into it. You are mine. The tape curled at the corner, which felt too on the nose even for me. So I pressed it and said out loud, "Stay." I texted a friend who prays with her whole life. "Can we talk? Not urgent, important." She called within 2 minutes. When I answered, my first word was a sob I hadn't scheduled. She waited the way love knows how. When my sound became a sentence, I said I almost gave up on myself, and then I said his name. It felt like he sat down. We made a plan that wasn't a contract with shame, but a map for mercy. We wrote 3 cards and slid them into the cabinet where I reach for tea. Who I am, daughter, loved, seen, not a problem to fix, not an accident to correct. Allowed to be helped. When the night is loud, tell God first, no editing. Text loud to my friend. Step onto the balcony and name 5 things I can see. Drink water. Read Isaiah 43 out loud, even if my voice trembles. Who I call, my friend, my counselor, a second friend, my pastor's wife, and the crisis line, because love plans for midnight while the sun is up. We prayed, not a performance, just 2 daughters telling their father the truth. After amen, I noticed my lungs had been holding themselves hostage. They let go. We took a short walk because sidewalks speak a language my body understands. The pigeons were busy being pigeons, and it felt theological, small creatures eating crumbs while the world keeps turning, unafraid of being seen. A few days later, my doctor scheduled another test. Same place, same ritual. I dressed in the paper gown that never fits a soul and tried to sit like someone who had options. I whispered, "You are mine," as if pinning a name tag to my fear. Machines did their indifferent work. The technician, kind but careful, said the usual, "You'll hear soon." Soon took its time. The morning the results came, the clinic smelled like sanitizer and patience. My doctor's face is trained to be readable without giving away too much. He scrolled. He frowned. He called a colleague. "Let's compare," he murmured. They layered images, checked dates, verified my name, my birth date, the identifiers that make me me on paper. "This doesn't match prior scans," he said finally. "Findings today are inconsistent with the previous diagnosis." He wasn't careless. He was measured, ethical. He suggested follow-up, additional verification, the due diligence medicine owes to reality. I nodded because prudence and faith are not enemies, but inside me, something unclenched that had been a fist for months. I walked to my car slowly as if the ground might argue. I didn't run victory laps. I sat with my forehead on the steering wheel and said, "Thank you," like it was a new word I'd just learned to pronounce. Not because the science didn't matter. It mattered deeply. But because the God who made truth also loves to write sentences the night cannot author. The test had said incurable. The paper now said otherwise. In between those 2 pages was a 3 a.m. kitchen and a presence that doesn't need to shout to be sovereign. I told very few people that day, not because I wanted to hoard a miracle, but because I wanted to hold it without turning it into a headline. I called my mother. She heard the change in my silence before I formed a sentence. "Tell me," she whispered. I told her. She cried the kind of cry that waters a life. "Soup," she said through tears, because mothers translate Thanksgiving into recipes. "I'm making soup." I met with my counselor that week and handed her the new report, the way children bring shells to someone who will admire them. We talked about the mystery, about medicine and mercy, sharing a table without needing to argue. "Let's honor both," she said. "Let's take the follow-ups, let's bless the doctors, and let's name what happened at 3 a.m. without forcing it to fit a graph." That night I wrote 4 sentences in my journal like vows. I will not decide my worth in the dark. I will not worship a word printed on paper. I will tell the truth out loud and ask for help. I will serve people who are still sitting where I sat, because that was the other thing the kitchen taught me. Miracles are not trophies, they are assignments. If God rewrote a line on my story, then part of my purpose is to sit with people whose pages still say incurable, and to be there at the counter, in the waiting room, on the phone at 3:11, so they are not alone when the night tries to end the paragraph. I began small. Tuesdays, I delivered groceries with a community team to seniors who live alone. An elderly woman offered me lavender candies and stories in equal measure. Thursdays, I sent 3 texts, one to a young mom awaiting results, one to a man in my church who lives with chronic pain, one to a college student managing panic. Nothing eloquent, just, "You are not an interruption. I see you. If tonight is loud, text me loud." I taped a second verse next to Isaiah 43 on the mirror, Psalm 34:4. I sought the Lord, and he answered me and delivered me from all my fears. The 2 lines stood side by side like friends who attend the same service every week. You are mine. I answered you. The tape still curls at the corner. I still press it and say, stay. Follow-up appointments confirmed what that first inconsistency suggested. My doctor never called it a miracle. He called it the current state of the data. I didn't correct him, I thanked him. I brought the nurses muffins, I signed the forms, and kept my next dates. Faith didn't make me reckless, it made me grateful and thorough. On a quiet evening, I sat again in the kitchen where ink once felt louder than breath. I lit a candle because light is allowed to stay. I brewed tea because the kettle has become my bell. I opened my journal and wrote one more sentence, not as theology for the world, but as testimony for my bones. The paper speaks, but the presence has the last word. If your paper says something heavy today, I will not offer you slogans. I will offer you company. I will offer you the God who sits in kitchens at 3 a.m., who does not flinch at hard words, who knows your name without checking your wristband. I will offer you a handrail for the long staircase. Tell the truth to God. Tell the truth to a person who will stay. Breathe in, breathe out. Tape a promise where your eyes will find it, and let hope put a chair beside you. Because sometimes the miracle is the scan that shifts, and sometimes the miracle is that your lungs remember how to be brave while you wait. Both are holy, both are seen, both are kept. And this is how my chapter began. Not with a trumpet, but with a whisper that outlived the night. Morning arrived like someone knocking softly and refusing to leave. I didn't leap from bed shouting victory. I negotiated with the alarm and stared at the ceiling as if it might do the talking for me. The memory of the kitchen, the 3 a.m. prayer, the felt nearness, the wordless sense of I am here, hovered like warmth left in a chair after someone stands. I was afraid to move in case I scattered it. I was afraid not to move in case it faded from neglect. I waited for dread to lunge, the way it usually did, first and loud. It didn't. It lingered in the doorway as if considering the new rules of a room it once owned. That small delay surprised me. Despair, in my experience, rarely had manners. I whispered, "Are you still here?" The question didn't embarrass me. It was the honest prayer of a child feeling for a hand in the dark. A gentleness pressed against my sternum, not cinematic, not dramatic, just enough to keep time with my breathing. The sentence from the night returned like engraving you can trace with your finger. "You are mine." I said it aloud and felt my shoulders rise into it, as if a hand on my back were reminding me how to stand. I'm not the heroine who transforms overnight into a motivational speaker. I was a person who put water on to boil because yesterday the kettle argued convincingly with winter. I wrapped both palms around the mug and let heat do what heat does. Remind stiff fingers that blood is a friend. While it hissed, I made a small plan because the voice hadn't felt like a slogan. It felt like an invitation. Invitations, I decided, deserve RSVP in the form of steps. I chose 3 for that day. Tell someone more clearly than a voice note. Put scripture where my eyes trip over it. Go outside long enough for sunlight to remember my name. I texted my friend, "Can we talk?" Not urgent, important. She called within 2 minutes, not because she thinks I can't dial, but because she knows the canyon between intention and action can widen by the second. When I answered, my first word was a sob I hadn't scheduled. She waited the way practiced love waits, and when the sound became a sentence, I said, "I almost ended everything yesterday." The admission sat between us like a third person who required politeness and truth. She didn't panic. "Thank you for telling me," she said. "I'm here. I was praying when your text blinked. Isaiah 43 again. I said your name out loud so heaven and your walls could hear it." We laughed, and the laugh walked into the room like a toddler, unself-conscious and valuable simply because it exists. Then I told her about the tile floor, the prayer, the steady presence, the word mine landing like an anchor. I didn't name methods, only the closeness of an end that had seemed helpful and the replacement of that door with a different one. "Purpose," she repeated, turning the word from bumper sticker to furniture. "Okay, we need chairs for this table. Today you and I will make a safety plan baptized in mercy, not shame. May I come over?" "Yes," I said. It was a yes to her, and it was a yes to staying. I took my Bible to the bathroom mirror and taped Isaiah 43:1 where my sleepy eyes would run into it. "I have called you by name. You are mine." The corner refused to stick. The metaphor was too on the nose, so I pressed it hard and said, "Stay," like I was talking to the verse and my soul at once. I opened the blinds. Light doesn't need an introduction, it knows its part. I made the bed, not because neatness saves souls, but because a made bed tells my brain that order can coexist with uncertainty. Then I set a notebook on the table and wrote that day's date like a truce. "I will meet you here, even if all I have is 5 minutes and a stubborn tear." My friend knocked. She didn't say, "You look exhausted," though I did. She said, "You look seen," and that sentence loosened something in my neck. We sat with tea like it was liturgy. From her bag she pulled a small stack of blank index cards and a black pen. "We'll write truth where the lies like to sit," she said, "not to perform, so we can reach for it when the night gets loud." We wrote 3 headings: who I am, daughter, beloved, seen, called by name, not a problem to fix, not an accident to correct, not invisible, a person allowed to be helped. I underlined that twice. When the night is loud, tell God first, no editing, text loud to my friend so she knows to call, step outside, even the balcony, and name 5 things I can see. Drink water, read Isaiah 43 aloud, whispering still counts. Who I call my friend, my counselor, a second trusted friend, my pastor's wife, and the crisis line, because love doesn't pretend midnight will never come. It prepares for it while the sun is up. We prayed next, not a speech, just a few sentences and the kind of silence that breathes. I noticed my lungs had been held hostage. They returned to me. "Now we walk," she said, pointing at the door with the gentle authority of a nurse coaxing first steps after surgery. 10 minutes of sunlight. I'll tell you about my fern. We walked. She told me how she'd killed an allegedly unkillable plant, resurrected it, then overwatered it, the humility of small failures. Sidewalks pressed a simple rhythm into our feet, and I remembered why people talk better while moving forward. The body lends the tongue its courage. Around the corner, an older man fed pigeons with priestly solemnity. A little boy squealed every time the birds startled up and rained down again. The boy's ponytail flag waved joy. Something thawed in me 1 degree. We weren't discussing doctrine, but it felt like theology anyway. A God who makes light, and neighbors and tiny gray birds that strut like they invented concrete. Back inside, my friend hugged me like punctuation. "Text me tonight," she said. "1 word's enough, here." After she left, the apartment tested whether it could revert to being a stage for my undoing. It couldn't. I'd invited too many witnesses, God, a friend, a verse on a mirror, the boy and the birds. At the table I asked, what does purpose look like today? Not 5 years from now, today. The answer arrived not as a blueprint but as breadcrumbs. Write to your counselor, put scripture by the kettle. Encourage 3 people without speeches. I emailed my counselor, could we meet sooner? Yesterday was hard. I need to tell the truth. I texted a co-worker going through a divorce. Thinking of you. No need to reply. You are not a burden. I texted my younger cousin before her exam. You're more than scores. Proud of you for showing up. I messaged a woman from church who lives with chronic pain. If you need a ride this week, ask. If not, I still see you. None of these dented the world's statistics. Each punctured the lie that I was useless. Purpose, I discovered, is a plural word dressed in singular acts. Afternoon quiet used to scare me. This time I treated it as a room with a friend already seated. I read Isaiah 43 slowly, aloud, like letters from a place that knows my street. When I reached you are precious in my eyes. Something relaxed behind my ribs. Precious felt rebellious aimed at my own name. I whispered it like a dare to shame. I am precious to God. The walls didn't collapse. Shame didn't file a motion. Peace settled like rent paid in advance. I found a cardboard box I'd avoided. Old journals I was afraid to read without compassion. I asked God to sit with me if the pages accused. I found entries where my handwriting shook with joy over small mercies, a loud sunset, a concert where we lost our voices, a campfire where a stranger told me I looked held. I found entries where I wrestled too, honest about doubt. The pages didn't mock me. They testified, you survived other nights. God met you in other kitchens. The voice keeps an address. I ate dinner at the table, not standing at the counter like an apology. I lit a candle, not to impress a guest, but to bless the person who lives here. I wrote a short prayer and slid it under my pillow. Jesus, if I dream, let me dream of being found. If I wake, let me wake into your presence. Then I rehearsed the safety plan like a fire drill, so my body would know the exits, even if smoke stung my eyes. I texted my friend, here. She replied with a heart and the word, with. Night came. The ache visited as aches do. It asked its old questions. I answered with new sentences. When it told me I was too heavy for people, I remembered the old man and the birds. The heavier the railing, the greater his delight. When it said I was an interruption to God, I pictured the boy laughing as wings filled the air. I imagined heaven's laughter braided into my breath. When it questioned daughter, I pressed my palm to the mirror and remembered who had done the naming. Before sleep, I said what I wanted tomorrow to hear. I will not decide my value in the dark. I set my alarm a little earlier, not for productivity, but for presence. 10 minutes with the one who didn't leave when the minute tried to end me. I slept. I dreamed a path through a field with someone walking beside me whose face I couldn't see, but my shoulders dropped in the dream the way they do when someone taller carries the heavy bag. I woke before the alarm. A small mercy. Pipes hummed. A neighbor's radio whispered. A truck clattered down the street and underneath a kept quiet. Are you here? I asked. The answer was not thunder, but the kind of silence that keeps promises. The days that followed didn't make me a person who never trembles. They made me a person who knows where to put the tremble. There is a difference between being ruled by a minute and being met in one. There is a difference between a voice that drags you toward an ending and a voice that calls you by name toward a beginning. I was learning the difference with tea and verses and walks and phone calls and candles and honesty that stopped auditioning. 3 weeks later, a hard night arrived with no obvious trigger. Sometimes despair doesn't need a reason, only a memory of permission. The room narrowed, air thickened. Lies took numbers like impatient customers. You are too much. You are not enough. Everyone will tire of you. This will never end. I reached for the cabinet card and read it like a teacher taking attendance. Tell God first, no editing. God, it's loud, I'm scared. Text loud, she called. Stand and name 5 things you see, she said. Lamp, curtain, the chipped mug, the candle stub, my shoes. 4 things you can touch. Counter, fabric, wood, my pulse. 3 you can hear. The fridge hum, a car, my breath. 2 you can smell. Soap, tea. 1 you can taste. Mint. By the time I whispered mint, the lies had shrunk a foot. We read Psalm 23, not because we felt pastoral, but because those words have walked many people through night and know where to place the feet. Do you want me to come over? She asked. I want to try staying with God and the list, I said. If I text come, come. Shoes on, she said. We stayed on the phone while I boiled water. We talked about nothing and everything. Crackers, weather. Even small talk can be liturgy when it refuses to crown fear. When we hung up, the night had loosened its grip. Purpose began showing up disguised as errands. On Tuesdays, I joined a community group that packs grocery boxes for seniors who live alone. The leader, gentle forearms that look like they've lifted casseroles and babies, said, "If your hands shake, the groceries won't mind." We climbed stairwells, listened to stories at open doors. One woman insisted on sending us off with lavender candies. They taste like a garden almost becoming sugar, she said. And she was right. I drove home and realized I'd spent 2 hours thinking about other people's nights, and my own noise had lowered. Service didn't erase ache, it reoriented it. I wasn't a savior delivering boxes. I was a daughter participating in a family business I hadn't known I belonged to. My counselor called it training joy to return. Joy is a shy bird, she said. Set out seed. So I set seed. Walks, early sunsets, turning my phone off for 1 hour and turning my face toward whoever was in front of me. I hid sticky notes in cabinets and pockets. Lift your chin, drink water. You don't have to earn oxygen. Finding them later felt like mail from a kinder future. In my kitchen, I started to sing again. Not on key, not loudly, but enough to remind the walls what hope sounds like. I sang fragments that fit in small lungs. You know my name. You hold me fast. My voice cracked on the high notes. I gave those to the birds and kept the low ones. Not every day was a clean page. Some were smudges. I woke one morning angry, not at anyone, but at the slow speed of healing, at miracles that look like medication and therapy and friends, at a world that keeps spinning and expects me to pick up milk. I told God my pettiness. I told him I wanted the ceiling to split and neon letters to scroll purpose across my wall. I told him subtlety felt like being cheated. I expected reprimand. I heard the kettle. Into the steam came a sentence, warm and firm. I am not cheating you, I am keeping you. Keeping unpacked itself, kept like a promise, like tomatoes jarred for winter, like sheep guarded by a shepherd who sleeps across the doorway. My anger curled up beside that word and slept. When the future tiptoed back in, it didn't arrive with trumpets. It came as a decision to RSVP, to a weekend retreat. It came as buying a new planner and writing rest into Saturday, as if it were a meeting with someone important. It knocked louder when my boss asked me to lead a small project. I felt perfectionism twitch like a dog hearing walk. I'm afraid to fail, I said. I know, he said. I'm not asking you to be impressive. I'm asking you to bring your calm. I laughed out loud because calm is not on my resume, but I said yes. Purpose, I learned, is less about headlines and more about faithfulness measured in emails sent kindly, meetings where presence weighs more than solutions, Wednesdays that look ordinary and feel holy. A month after 3 a.m., I stood at the window and realized I was looking forward to Wednesday. Not someday, Wednesday. The volunteer route, the lavender candy that tastes like a pardon, my counselor at 3, the candle at dusk, the verse on the mirror still trying to curl, and my finger pressing it saying, stay. I won't romanticize the rest of my life from here. I'm not immune tonight. I'm accompanied. That is different enough to rename the room. Sometimes I still ask, what is my calling? And here, to be my daughter where I send you. Sometimes I want a map and get a hand instead. Sometimes the miracle is a scan that shifts. Sometimes it's that my lungs agree to participate one more time. Sometimes it's laughter over a dead fern. Sometimes it's a one-word text from a friend, here. Sometimes it's pigeons practicing resurrection for anyone willing to watch. If you came to this page looking for a formula, I can't give you one. If you came for company, I can. Sit at this table called Purpose. There is bread, there is tea, there are index cards with truths written in handwriting that shakes and still counts as handwriting. There's a candle we light at dusk to announce to the dark, you don't get to decide the meaning of this room. There is a voice that doesn't shame the trembling, but names the trembling one daughter. There is a shepherd who keeps you when you aren't sure you can keep yourself. And there is a Wednesday coming, plain, bright, faithful, where we will practice living forward, not because we're strong, because we are held. I used to think living forward was a kind of sprint. Make a 10-year plan, bulletproof your calendar, learn 5 morning routines from people who look invincible on book covers. After the night that almost finished me and the voice that refused to leave, I learned that living forward prefers smaller verbs: notice, choose, return. It is less about controlling the horizon and more about agreeing with grace in the next 5 minutes. The first 5 minutes of most days became liturgy. Kettle on, verse on the mirror, window cracked for air that remembered trees. I whispered, "I am yours," before my phone could nominate me for any other identity. It felt silly some mornings, like putting on armor to go to the mailbox. Other mornings, it felt like oxygen entering a room that had been arguing with itself all night. To practice living forward, I drew 3 columns in my notebook and labeled them with words that were beginning to feel like furniture. Anchor, rhythm, circle. Anchor was the truth heavy enough to hold when every thought wanted to float away. The anchor wasn't a concept, it was a person. I wrote the same line at the top of each week. Jesus, keep me. Not help me be impressive or make this painless, but keep. I taped those 2 verses right where my eyes kept tripping, Isaiah 43:1 and Psalm 34:4, until I could almost recite them from the shape of the tape alone. Rhythm was how grace borrows my body. Walks, tea, a candle at dusk. I kept discovering that my soul listens to my schedule, whether I mean it to or not. If I let the day push me without any pauses, my chest learned to brace. If I built even 2 small rests into a day, my breath learned not to hide. I started ending workdays with a 3-minute pause I called the turn. Hands open, eyes closed, 1 sentence of thanks, 1 of honesty, 1 of request. It was a tiny hinge. Doors open and close on hinges. Circle was who hears the truth when I am tempted to edit it. My friend, with her shoes by the door, my counselor who refuses to measure me by mood, the pastor's wife with slow streets mapped into her prayers, 2 others I could text loud without explanation. I added 1 more name hesitantly, me. I wanted to become a person who could hear my own ache and not rush to fix, who could offer myself presence before prescriptions. Kindness to self sounded like a luxury to my old discipline. It turned out to be obedience to a God who doesn't bark orders at the wounded. The first place living forward had to be practiced was the clinic. Follow-ups were not optional. Hope is not a substitute for appointments. Sitting in a waiting room where everyone carries paper that looks heavier than it is, I felt the old panic try to rehearse its monologue. I answered it differently now. I breathed in for 4, out for 7. I touched the corner of a verse card in my pocket like a talisman, even though I know the difference between faith and superstition. Sometimes my fingers needed a sacrament. I prayed for the people around me by guesswork. Lord, the woman in blue who keeps checking the door, keep her. The man who jokes too loud because he's scared, keep him. The nurse, who has answered this same question 100 times today and still smiles, keep her. Praying for strangers doesn't always melt dread, but it upends the hierarchy of fear. The room expands. We are not enemies waiting for scarce mercy. We are a small community under the same roof of need. When results continued to confirm what we hoped, my doctor stayed measured. Good science always does. I thanked him. I said, "I'm grateful you take care with your words." He nodded and replied, "I'm glad you keep coming back for them." I left that day thinking about how long I had avoided places that might deliver bad news, as if staying home could protect me. Living forward does not avoid truth. It invites God into it and chooses to keep walking. Another place I had to practice was work. Before the night, I hid fatigue behind competence. After, I told my manager, plain and without drama, "I'm building new rhythms. I may block 10 minutes between meetings to breathe and write 3 lines. It will make me more present, not less productive." He surprised me by nodding, like I had brought him a solution to his own problem. "Let's try it," he said. "If it helps you be here when you're here, I'll protect it." The first afternoon I blocked that time, guilt knocked. I answered with a question, "Do you want my speed or my soul?" The Lord wanted my soul. My team did too, even if they didn't have language for it. Living forward also meant returning to the simplest kind of ministry, showing up. The Tuesday grocery route continued. I learned to count victories in stairs climbed and names remembered. Miss Eunice pressed lavender candies into my palm with a conspirator's grin and told me about a grandson who wraps gratitude over dinner. Mr. Alvarez showed me the ficus he's kept alive through 3 apartments and 2 cities, and how he turns it on the windowsill once a week, so it doesn't forget the sun. I wrote that line down because I'm a ficus that forgets. On a Thursday in early spring, my counselor asked if I wanted to join a small group training to be peer companions, people who have walked through the valley without pretending they built the road. "You don't teach," she said. "You witness. You learn how to stay in the room. You help people create their own anchor rhythm circle." I hesitated because something in me still wanted to graduate before guiding. "I still have loud nights," I said. "That's not disqualifying," she replied. "It's an asset. People trust companions who still need a companion." Our training was practical and unglamorous. How to listen without fixing. How to alert help when danger is present, how to make a safety plan that someone will actually use at 3 a.m. We practiced saying phrases I had once needed and now needed to offer. "You are not a burden. Your honesty is safe here. Let's find numbers together and tape them inside the cabinet." We rehearsed quiet. It is amazing how much healing hides in quiet that is not empty but attentive. The first person I was paired with was a college student named Leah, who wore sleeves long enough to hide winter. She didn't want speeches. She wanted presence that didn't flinch. We met at a cafe that smelled like cinnamon and persistence. I asked her 3 questions that have become my template. "Where does it hurt?" She pointed to her chest and said, "Here," like a fist. "When is it loudest?" "After midnight, when everyone else is sleeping and the house feels too full of history." "What does help look like tonight?" "Someone who won't make me apologize for existing." We wrote an index card together. Who I am. Not a problem, not a project, a beloved person. When it's loud, text loud to me and 2 others, put feet on the floor, drink water, read Psalm 23 out loud even if it sounds like mumbling. Who I call. We put numbers into her phone under a contact named Hope. We scheduled a weekly walk because bodies remember what mouths forget. As we stood to leave, she said, "I thought faith meant pretending. This feels like honesty that still believes." I told her that sentence could pastor me for a year. At church, living forward looked like saying yes to small tasks I used to avoid because crowds made me want to evaporate. Handing out bulletins, refilling the water carafe, praying with a person who didn't want the prayer team's official name badge, just a hand. The pastor sometimes asked me to close the service with a short blessing. I wrote them at the kitchen table where the 3 a.m. prayer had remapped my heart. "May the God who knows your street keep you," one went. "May your cabinet door hold numbers like porch lights. May the loud night find you rehearsed in love. May you remember you are not an interruption." People lingered after those words, as if we had turned the sanctuary into a living room. Living forward, I learned, requires forgiveness at a brisk pace, mostly of myself. On a Wednesday, I missed my morning window. I scrolled before scripture. I arrived at work already braced. By noon, I felt frayed and guilty for feeling frayed. At the turn, my 3-minute hinge, I confessed it all and heard the simplest correction in my chest. Return now, not tomorrow, not after penance, now. I stepped outside, found a rectangle of sun on the concrete and stood in it like a plant. I breathed, whispered the 2 verses, texted my friend here. The day didn't become a movie montage. It became bearable, which is holiness enough for a Wednesday. Some evenings I practiced what my counselor called joy drills. They weren't performative. They were training wheels for a soul that had forgotten play. I kept a jar labeled evidences, tiny slips naming proofs of presence. Miss Eunice's rap-loving grandson, the ficus that remembers sun, the way Psalm 34:4 sounds like a door opening, the lavender candy that tastes like forgiven. When nights got loud, I poured the slips onto the table and read them like mail. It felt childish. It felt necessary. There were setbacks. I caught a cold that turned into a cough, that turned into a week of cancelled plans and too much time with my own thoughts. The old scripts tried to cast themselves in my silence. "See? You're fragile. You're unreliable. People do fine without you." I answered by inviting my circle to speak out loud what my ears would not say to me. "You are allowed to be weak," my friend said. "You're not auditioning for Beloved." The pastor's wife texted, "Rest is not a betrayal of calling. It's part of it." My counselor sent a single line, "Keeping fixing. Let God keep you." I lay on the couch with tea and let those sentences do what medicine does when you stop arguing with it. Work slowly and thoroughly. On a bright afternoon after the cough retreated, I took my notebook to the park. Children announced their joy with the authority of trumpets. Dogs negotiated treaties with squirrels. I wrote a question on a clean page. What does it mean to be kept and also sent? The answer arrived like a gentle braid. Kept means the verdict over me is settled. Daughter, loved, mine. Sent means that verdict creates errands of love wherever I am. Office, clinic, grocery aisle, church pew, sidewalk. Kept means I am not measured by outcomes. Sent means I still show up with bread, numbers, presents, and prayers. Kept means I can sit when I need to. Sent means sometimes I stand so someone else can sit. I started carrying a spare set of index cards and a small roll of tape in my bag. You would be surprised how often the opportunity appears to help someone write who I am when it's loud, who I call, in the back hall after church, outside a clinic, in a break room that smells like microwaved leftovers and fatigue. Sometimes people refused. Sometimes they cried. Sometimes they said, "No one has ever helped me make a plan that assumes I'll have a hard night and doesn't shame me for it." We taped the card to the inside of a locker. We set alarms labeled "Breathe." We wrote the crisis number in bold. We named their circle. A woman named Tasha called hers the porch because she wanted help that comes with light. The most surprising classroom for living forward was my own kitchen, the place God had taken back from despair. I began inviting 3 people at a time for soup on Thursdays. We kept rules simple. We don't fix, we witness. We keep confidentiality unless danger says otherwise. Everyone helps wash dishes. The candle at dusk is our porch light. We read one psalm out loud, whispering counted. We wrote 3-line prayers on index cards and traded them like gifts. The room never looked impressive. It smelled like garlic and hope. One night, a man I didn't know well showed up soaked in rain. He hovered at the door with eyes that scanned the floor for exits. "I was headed somewhere else," he said. No one asked where. We put a towel on his shoulders and a warm bowl in his hands. He stared at the candle as if it were alive. When he finally spoke, he whispered, "I forgot that God sits in kitchens." We nodded, as if he had said the deepest doctrine. Maybe he had. On a different Thursday, Leah, the college student with winter sleeves, arrived with a cake slightly lopsided, but iced in courage. 6 months, she said, eyes bright. She meant 6 months since she'd thrown away the just in case. We lit a candle and sang so off-key we scared the fear off the balcony. She told us she'd started a lunch table on campus called the 5 Minutes, where 3 friends text loud and sit with each other until the volume drops. I felt holy jealousy, the kind you feel when the next generation does something braver and earlier. "Teach me," I said, and she did. About ruthless honesty, about humor as relief, about taping verses where roommates will bump into them and not mind. Living forward did not erase grief. On the anniversary of a loss I rarely speak of, I felt heavy and tempted to grade my faith by how quickly I could cheer up. I didn't. I practiced lament. I told God exactly where it hurt without using indoor voice. I wrote a letter to the person I missed and folded it into my Bible like an offering. I took a slow walk and told my friend, "Today is loud for a different reason." She replied with a single word that has become benediction for me, "with." We sat on the steps, said nothing for 20 minutes, and somehow that nothing did more work than 1,000 explanations. As spring edged towards summer, the question changed from "will I make it?" to "how will I give what I've been given?" The answer wasn't a platform, it was a pattern. Be in the room, light the candle, carry numbers, tape verses, ask better questions. Let Jesus be the anchor and the assignment. When invitations came to tell my story with a microphone, I said yes only if we could project resources on the screen and leave them up while people prayed, because testimony without a map can feel like watching a movie without exits. After those nights, lines formed, not for selfies, for confession. People said incurable in a dozen different languages: addiction, anxiety, loneliness, shame. We wrote cards, we prayed short prayers, we hugged like lighthouses, firm, warm, pointing. One Sunday after service, a woman met me in the aisle and asked, "How do you keep from being afraid the darkness will come back?" I answered without pretending bravery. "Sometimes I'm afraid," I said, "but I don't face the dark the same way. I face it rehearsed. My anchor is not my mood. My rhythm gives my body a way to agree with peace. My circle keeps watch when my eyelids quit. And this matters. I don't fight it alone in a room that thinks it's a universe. I let God name the room." She nodded slowly. "Name the room," she repeated as if trying on a coat. That evening I stood at the sink, rinsing bowls from soup, and thought about names. The clinic calls a space a waiting room, as if the best we can do there is endure. My kitchen had been a battlefield, then an altar, now a table. The church sanctuary is a sanctuary because we say it is and act like it together. I decided to give my days names that told the truth about their purpose. Monday became mercy practice. Wednesday became keeping school. Thursday stayed the table. Saturday morning was the long walk. Sunday evening was blessing draft. Naming the room is not magic. It is authority borrowed from a father who named light day and darkness night, and then kept showing up in both. On the final page of that month's notebook, I drew 2 columns. On the left, I wrote what living backward looks like: bracing, predicting catastrophe, scrolling before scripture, hiding, refusing help, worshipping paper. On the right, I wrote what living forward looks like: returning, rehearsing truth, calling, walking, lighting, taping, sitting, serving, singing low, blessing. The lists weren't to shame me. They were to give me a map when the night tried to call itself north. If you are reading this and wondering whether your future can be more than survival, I will not offer slogans. I will offer this. Begin with 5 minutes. Give them to the one who does not hurry you. Put water on. Put a verse where your eyes crash. Put a number where your hands reach. Put your feet on a sidewalk and let the pigeons remind you that resurrection is being practiced in small bodies everywhere. Text loud if you need to. Whisper Jesus like someone you expect to answer. Living forward will not always feel like progress. Sometimes it will feel like holding your ground. Sometimes it will look like cutting one grape at a time for a child while you hum a hymn and forget the words. Sometimes it will sound like I'm here, spoken into a phone at 3:11 a.m. Sometimes it will ache, but you will be accompanied, and accompaniment turns even ordinary minutes into holy ground. Tomorrow has not been promised to me in a brochure with glossy photos. Tomorrow has been promised to me as a step. And there is a hand that meets me on each step, a voice that stays, a shepherd who keeps. I am learning to live forward in that cadence, kept, then sent, then kept, until the day forward and home turn out to be the same direction. I used to think survival was something you do quietly, breathe, show up, smile with the edges of your mouth so no one asks questions your throat can't carry. But survival has a second half I didn't know, telling the truth out loud so shame can't be the editor. The day I learned that arrived dressed like any other Saturday, the kind where the washing machine hums like a faithful appliance and sunlight invents small galaxies in the living room dust. I'd been practicing living forward, kettle, verse on the mirror, the walk, the phone call, the cabinet cards with who I am, when the night is loud, who I call. The 3 a.m. minute had lost its throne. Nights still visited, but they didn't hold the lease. Even so, a piece of my story stayed hidden, the way children hide scraped knees under long socks. I'm fine, really. I hope people would admire my resilience without asking where the bandages were. My mother called while I folded towels. She always hears the background of my voice, as if it's its own language. You sound here, she said. I am, I said, surprising both of us. We traded soup tips and onion slicing theology, how to cry over the right things and not because of fumes. Then she asked a question that came disguised as mercy. Are you really okay? I could have answered with the usual, busy, tired, getting there. Instead, I sat on the edge of the bed, a towel in my lap like a white flag, and said words I had not said to her since the kitchen floor. I almost ended my life. Silence has textures. This one felt like a hand covering a mouth to stop a cry and then choosing to cry anyway. Baby, she said at last, thank you for telling me. Thank you for staying. I would have held the sky down with both hands if it meant keeping you. How did I not know? There was a voice, I said, in the worst minute. It called me daughter. It said it saw me. It said there is purpose. She drew in a breath like a sail catching wind. That sounds like him. Then, because she is my mother. I'm coming over. Do you need anything? Soup. Always soup. When she arrived, she touched my face like she was memorizing it again. We sat at the kitchen table that had collected so many ordinary Tuesdays and now had to hold this Saturday. I told her about the cabinet cards, the verse on the mirror, the friend with shoes by the door, the counselor who added the crisis line not as a threat, but as a promise. You are not alone at midnight. I told her I'm not cured, I'm being kept. She didn't argue with words like kept or purpose. She nodded as if she recognized a melody from her childhood. I will keep you too, she said, not instead of God, alongside him, like a backup hand. We walked through a safety plan because love that prays also writes down numbers. She wrote it in her handwriting, the one that signed permission slips and birthday cards, and taped it to her refrigerator like art. If you need me, she said, eyes fierce and soft at once. Call. At any hour. I'll only be mad if you don't. After she left, I breathed a breath that reached all the way to my heels, telling one person had moved the room's furniture. Shame lost corners to hide in. I sensed the Lord's quiet pleasure, not as applause, but as nearness. You brought light into the room. It looks good on you. The next truth I needed to tell wasn't to family. It was to church, not a performance, a testimony. The word intimidated me. Testimonies had always sounded like neat before and after pictures in pretty frames, not stories that still tremble. I told my pastor's wife that I felt compelled, nervous but compelled, to speak on a Sunday when people share what God has done. She smiled like she'd been saving me a spot. "We'll make space," she said, "and we won't rush you." All week I rocked like a small boat tied to a post called, "Is this wise?" I prayed specifics. "Lord, I don't want to glorify the dark. I want to glorify you. Teach me to tell the truth without adding shadow." The answer arrived like a lantern. "Tell what you lived and who carried you. Don't teach a class, witness. Teach." Sunday came with cool air and the smell of coffee in the foyer. I took my seat one row closer than usual and sang the low parts to keep my breathing honest. When the pastor invited testimonies, my heart beat in my throat. I stood. My knees felt like they'd become very interested in gravity. I walked to the microphone and breathed in the face of 100 mornings we'd spent together, these people and I, inside song and scripture. Now I would entrust them with my night. "I don't love microphones," I began, earning a gentle laugh I needed. "But I love what God did too much to sit down." I told them about the report, the word incurable, the 3 a.m. kitchen, the prayer that didn't sound like a movie, and the presence that didn't need one. I told them I had almost ended my life and that God had found me in the minute that tried to end me, had called me daughter and whispered purpose into my ribs. I told them about Isaiah 43, taped to a mirror that keeps trying to curl, and the way my finger presses both tape and soul and says, "Stay." I didn't tie a bow. I said, "Some nights are still loud. I'm learning where to put the tremble. I'm learning that tea and truth and phone calls can be worship. I'm learning that testimonies don't require finished stories. They require a faithful witness." For a beat, the room held the silence that recognizes holy ground. Then a sound rose that wasn't applause. It was a many-voiced yes. Nods, whispered thank you, a few Jesus, a few who said my name like a prayer. I returned to my seat and wept into a tissue someone had already placed there. It felt like being baptized again, submerged in corporate mercy and lifted by many hands. After service, a line formed, not of gawkers, but confessors. People handed me their minutes that wouldn't end like small animals they didn't know how to feed. 20 years ago, a man in his 50s said, "Same kitchen floor, same voice." A teen girl whispered, "I needed your words like oxygen." A woman with quiet eyes said, "I've been hiding pills in the cabinet just in case." I threw them away during the last song. She showed me her empty hands like certificates. We cried at the altar of ordinary courage. We traded numbers like soldiers share canteens. Back home, I told God I was tired in the very best way. I made soup because my mother's love had converted gratitude into chicken stock somewhere in my DNA. While it simmered, my phone brightened with messages, some from friends, some from people I only knew as "Peace be with you" in the aisle. Thank you for telling the truth. Thank you for not wrapping it in a bow. Thank you for saying daughter so I could borrow it. At 2 a.m., the enemy tried a different angle. Not despair, doubt about the testimony. You made it too dramatic. You made it too small. You shouldn't have said almost. You shouldn't have said anything. I sat up, flicked on the lamp, and preached to my own room in the past tense. She was almost finished. God called her daughter. He saw her. He spoke purpose. He is keeping her. The doubts looked like kids caught drawing on the wall. I smiled, turned off the lamp, and slept. In the days that followed, telling the truth out loud became stewardship. I wasn't guarding an epic, I was trimming a lamp and keeping oil. I met the teen for hot chocolate piled high with whipped cream. Her sleeves hid scars, her eyes hid galaxies. We talked about exams and sunsets and how certain songs feel like they're looking for you. I showed her the index card plan. She showed me how bossy sticky notes can be. We saved the hotline numbers in her phone under Hope 24/7. I had coffee with the man who had survived 2 decades earlier. He unfolded his own dog-eared cards, smudged and stubborn. "My wife and I read them on loud nights," he said. "We read them on quiet mornings, so our house knows the sound of truth when it walks in." I pocketed that sentence like a relic. My counselor asked if I'd consider a small group for people who have walked the valley and now want to become signposts. I hesitated. "I still need help," I said. "That's the only credential," she smiled. "People trust guides who still need a guide." We met on Thursdays in a lemon-clean room. We practiced listening without fixing, saying with more than why. We learned to draft safety plans someone could actually follow at midnight. Water, scripture, numbers, a code word, "Mine is loud," a map for the next 10 minutes. We rehearsed quiet that is not absence, but attention. One evening, a woman in the circle sat curled into herself, unable to speak. No one pried. When words finally came, they were simple. "I thought testimony was for people who never think about dying again. I'm learning it's for people who choose living again." We nodded. The room hummed like a tuned string. Telling the truth out loud also meant repenting of my respectable tricks, using scripture like a spell instead of a conversation, performing strength so people wouldn't see me need God. The Lord didn't shame me. He taught me shorter prayers with more trust. "Jesus, keep me. Spirit, breathe for me. Father, say my name again." Sometimes that was all I had. Sometimes that was all that was required. As autumn practiced letting go, the trees preached an old sermon. Release does not equal death. Gold, then surrender. I stood on my balcony with a leaf in my palm and prayed, "Teach me to drop what I can't hold, my image, my need to impress, my fear that honesty will disappoint." The leaf didn't answer, but the light on it did. My mother asked if I would share at the women's night. "Only if it helps you breathe," she said. It did. We set tissues and water on every other chair. We prayed in a green room that smelled like hairspray and surrender. On stage, I told the truth again. Not tidier, not messier, true. We didn't close with a big anthem. We sang a simple chorus about being seen. We projected the crisis numbers and our care team's contact on the screen and left them up like porch lights. Afterward, while gathering the abandoned sweaters of the faithful, a woman asked if she could keep the index card where I'd scribbled, "You are mine." "I'll write another," I said, pressing it into her hand like a benediction. Driving home, I thought about the first daughter and how that word widened my world. Now telling the truth had widened it further. It turned my story into a doorway others could walk through without scraping their hearts on the frame. I sensed God's pleasure like a warm hand at the base of my neck. "Thank you," I whispered to the steering wheel, "for staying, for teaching me to stay, for letting me be a witness, not a headline." Back at the mirror, I taped a new verse beside Isaiah 43, Psalm 40. He drew me up from the pit, set my feet upon a rock, put a new song in my mouth. The tapes make a small, stubborn collage. I press their corners and say, "Stay," and I mean the paper and the promises and me. Before bed, I wrote another letter from the voice. Not as scripture, but as practice in listening. "Daughter, you are not a problem I am tired of solving. You are a person I delight to keep. Your honesty does not shrink my love. It gives it a place to land. When you speak, you break locks. When you whisper help, heaven hears a hymn. I am not leaving the room. Keep telling the truth out loud. It invites others to breathe. I slid the letter under my pillow like a secret I no longer had to hide. The next morning, an email waited from someone who had heard me on Sunday. I haven't told anyone, but I'm not okay. Could we talk? We did. We didn't fix. We sat. We wrote who I am, when it's loud, who I call. We taped it inside a kitchen cabinet. We put the crisis number in her phone under porch light. Before leaving, I lit her candle with the wooden match from my pocket and said, "This is your refusal to let the dark decide the room." Truth-telling is not a brand. It is a mercy. It is how we stop the night from telling the whole story. It is how we raise each other's chins. It is how the word incurable loses its throne even before the paper changes. And it is how we prepare together to walk others home. The first time I said, "I think I'm ready to record my story," the room did not tilt. The kettle stayed a kettle. The verses stayed taped, their corners still trying to curl. It felt right that the decision arrived on a Tuesday, unfamous, untheatrical, faithful, because purpose loves Tuesdays. I texted my friend, thinking of filming a testimony this week. She replied with confetti and, "I'm free to hold the camera and your courage." My counselor asked the only question I didn't know I needed. What do you want people to feel at the end? Not what they should think, what they should feel. I closed my eyes and saw shoulders lowering, lungs remembering, a stubborn porch light clicking on in a room that swore it only owned dark. "Seen," I said, "and safe to reach for help." She circled 2 words on her pad, "seen plus safe," and slid them to me like a benediction disguised as homework. We set the camera on my kitchen table. There is a holiness to a lens aimed at honesty. It doesn't grade, it receives. My friend adjusted the frame so the mirror verses weren't in the shot. This was about God, not props. She placed a glass of water within reach. "If you need a pause," she said, "we pause. This is not a performance, it's a witness." I looked into the glass eye, as if it were a person awake at 3:11 a.m., phone heavy, heart heavier. "My name is..." I said it plain. "This is my story of being kept when I thought the story was over." I told the kitchen and the paper gown, the word incurable, and the 3 a.m. prayer that didn't sound like cinema. I told the presence that sat down and called me daughter. I named the cards in the cabinet, who I am, when the night is loud, who I call, and I spoke the crisis number slowly, like an address heaven uses to route help through human hands. At the end, I did not preach. I prayed, "Jesus, find the one who feels lost. Speak their name, sit in their room, keep them. Amen." We watched the footage once, not to polish, just to confirm the tone matched the truth. No bow on a wound, no tremble for drama. "That felt like a hand on a shoulder," my friend said. "Exactly what you wanted." We scheduled the upload for morning. Then we made soup, because testimony and soup are cousins in my life now. I woke at 3:11, wide awake for no reason that could justify itself. Old me would have argued with the wakefulness. New me treated it as an assignment. "Who?" I asked into the ceiling. Faces surfaced. My teenage friend with galaxies in her eyes, the elderly lady with lavender candies, a co-worker whose laugh had been thinner lately. I said their names out loud to populate the room with purpose. The prayer was not eloquent. It was present. At sunrise, I walked to the window and watched pigeons practice resurrection. When I returned to the table, the video had gone live. I turned my phone face down for the first hour on purpose, my counselor's tip, so my nervous system could greet morning before it greeted comments. When I finally flipped it, notifications had braided themselves into a liturgy. Some messages were angry. Pain often arrives wearing armor, but most sounded like doors unlatching. I thought I was the only one. I said help out loud. I called the number. I put cards in my cabinet. One photo stilled me, a bathroom mirror with "You are mine" scrawled across it in lipstick. Caption: couldn't find tape, found courage. If I was going to tell the world, I also wanted to touch it. So I turned Thursdays into the table, 3 to 12 people in my apartment, soup and light, index cards and honesty. We printed resources and taped them near the door like porch lights. Rules were promises. We don't fix, we witness. We keep confidentiality unless danger says otherwise. We wash dishes together because service loosens shame. We read a psalm aloud, whispering counts. We name our nights without auditioning for tragedy. Week 1, 4 chairs. Week 2, 8. Week 4, 12, and a neighbor I only knew by nod. She hovered in the doorway. "I saw your video," she said. "The nights are loud." She borrowed the word like a coat and exhaled. We made room, not just at the table, but in the sentences we said. I felt invisible Tuesday. I slept through my alarm and didn't hate myself. I called. I didn't, but I wrote it down. We taped her card inside a cabinet. We saved the crisis number in her phone under porch light. One rainy night, a man I barely knew arrived soaked and quiet as a closed umbrella. He stared at the candle a long time, then at the printed numbers, then at his hands. "I was on my way somewhere else," he said. He didn't say where. No one asked. We put a towel on his shoulders and a bowl in his hands. He whispered, "I heard the voice once too, years ago. I forgot how to listen." We slipped an index card into his palm like a seed. He wrote every letter slowly. "I am not an interruption." He came back the next week and brought bread. Community revealed itself as purpose with 1,000 names. Someone always chopped onions. Someone always stayed late, so no one dried the last dish alone. When finances tightened for one woman, we pooled grocery store gift cards and slid them into her coat with a note. "Seen plus safe." She cried in the hallway and said, "I don't know how to receive this." "Practice," I told her, a graduate of the same school. At work, my manager asked if I'd give a 15-minute talk at a training for team leads, creating brave spaces. Old me would have declined from the respectable safety of invisibility. New me wrote bullet points titled Bread, Numbers, Presence. I didn't say God into the microphone. I said dignity and listening, and post the hotline in the break room because love plans ahead. Afterward, a supervisor asked for the template I use with people: who I am, when it's loud, who I call. Watching him slide that card into his notebook felt like watching a lifeguard learn CPR. Nights still came as they do. Some were rude, some routine, some bright with stars that looked like pins holding the sky in place. On a loud one, I called the crisis line myself, not because my circle wasn't enough, but because I wanted to rehearse the truth I keep giving others. Asking for help is not failure, it is belonging. The volunteer's voice sounded like bread and water. She said my name like returning a lost item. We breathed together. When I hung up, I wrote in my journal, "Belonging sounds like bread and water." Sundays, the pastor sometimes asked me to close with a blessing. I wrote them at the kitchen table that had been reclaimed from despair. "May you find that the God who calls you daughter also knows your street. May your cabinet door hold numbers like porch lights. May the loud night find you rehearsed in love. May your lungs remember. May your feet remember. May you be kept." People lingered after those words, as if we'd turned the sanctuary into a living room. They came with their minutes in their hands, like small birds they didn't know how to feed. We wrote cards. We prayed short prayers with long loyalty. We hugged like lighthouses, steady, warm, pointing. My mother kept her promise to keep me alongside God. On random Tuesdays, she texted soup, which translates to "I'm already cooking." For my birthday, she handed me a box of blank index cards tied with a ribbon and a note. "For the truths you will still tell." I realized I was no longer afraid of future nights. I was curious about future Wednesdays. I'd become fluent in keeping. Leah, the college student with winter sleeves, arrived one Thursday carrying a small lopsided cake iced in audacity. 6 months, she grinned. She meant 6 months since throwing away the just in case. We lit a candle and sang off key. She told us she'd started a lunch table on campus called 5 Minutes. 3 friends text loud and sit together until the volume drops. Holy jealousy rose in me, the good kind a parent feels when a child does something braver and earlier. "Teach me," I said, and she did. Ruthless honesty, humor as relief, verses where roommates would bump into them and not mind. Grief did not disappear from my calendar. On an anniversary I rarely speak of, sorrow flattened me. Old scripts told me to grade my faith by how fast I could cheer up. I refused. I practiced lament. I told God exactly where it hurt, no indoor voice. I wrote a letter to the person I missed and tucked it into my Bible like a psalm. I texted my friend, "Today is loud for a different reason." She replied with our benediction word, "with." We sat on my steps and said nothing for 20 minutes, that nothing worked better than 1,000 explanations. As months folded, invitations came to share my story beyond our church. I said yes, only if we could project resources on the screen the whole time, crisis lines, local counselors, church care numbers, and if we could leave them up while people prayed. Testimony without a map can feel like watching a movie with locked exits. After those nights, lines formed. Not for selfies, for confession. People said incurable in a dozen dialects. Addiction, anxiety, loneliness, shame, debts, diagnoses, marriage, meaning. We wrote cards, we taped numbers inside purses, we prayed short prayers that unbolted long nights. One afternoon at the grocery store, aisle 6, I reached for tea and heard, "Excuse me, are you the one who said God called you daughter?" The woman's eyes brimmed. "He said it to me last night," she whispered, as if we were conspiring with heaven. "In my kitchen." We stood between chamomile and mint and thanked the God who haunts kitchens with mercy. I bought 2 boxes, 1 of each, and handed her the mint. "For loud nights," I said, "and for quiet mornings." She squeezed my hand like sealing a covenant neither of us wrote, but both of us were bound by love to keep. The table kept growing. We borrowed folding chairs from church. We trained 2 more hosts so Thursdays could be many places at once. We kept the rules: don't fix, witness, wash dishes, porch lights on the screen. We added 1 more. Every first Thursday, write a 3-line blessing for someone not in the room and mail it. Blessings travel farther than lectures. I still keep the cards in my cabinet. Their corners curl. I press them and say, "Stay," the way God has said to me in 1,000 minutes that thought they would be my last. I still text here at night. I still receive with. I still call when I need to. I still listen for the voice that called me daughter before I remembered how to answer to my own name. If you're reading this waiting for a polished ending, I don't have one. I have a practiced one. Each night ends with a candle and a sentence to my own soul: "You are kept." Each morning begins with water on, verse in sight, and a whispered, "Say my name again," and he does. The voice doesn't grow hoarse. The shepherd doesn't forget the sound of a sheep who once stood too close to the edge. He walks me home by walking me into other people's nights, handing me a lantern I didn't build. Some days I carry it, some days someone carries it for me. Both are holy. So here is my benediction for you, traveler who has read this far. May you know the God who sits in kitchens at 3 a.m. May your paper speak truth, but never louder than his presence. May your cabinet hold numbers like porch lights. May your friends keep their shoes by the door. May your lungs remember brave. May your feet remember forward. May your room be named by love. May you be kept, and being kept, may you keep others, until home and forward turn out to be the same direction.